The first rays of dawn painted the sky with hues of purple and orange. Ahosan knelt on his prayer rug, his forehead touching the ground in humble submission. He murmured the familiar Arabic words, his heart resonating with each syllable. Ahosan was a young man deeply rooted in his faith. His days began with the recitation of the Quran, its verses a soothing balm to his soul. Ahosan's devotion was evident in every aspect of his life. He treated others with kindness and compassion, always striving to please Allah. His peers admired his piety, often seeking his guidance on matters of faith. Ahosan, in turn, felt a sense of fulfillment in sharing his knowledge and strengthening the faith of others. Life, for Ahosan, was a tapestry woven with threads of prayer, charity, and righteous conduct. He believed wholeheartedly in the teachings of Islam and found solace in the embrace of his faith. Little did he know, a storm was brewing on the horizon, threatening to shake the very foundation of his beliefs. The world outside his sheltered life seemed vast and alluring. The city, with its endless possibilities and vibrant energy, called out to him, promising adventures and experiences he had only dreamed of. Ahosan became increasingly aware of the activities his friends engaged in, activities that seemed so different from his own life. They laughed freely, moved with confidence, and seemed to embrace life with an ease that fascinated him. These activities were at odds with his Islamic upbringing, creating a tension within him. He often found himself torn between the teachings he had grown up with and the enticing world his friends inhabited. Music, with its intoxicating melodies, began to stir something within him, a mixture of curiosity and a yearning he couldn't quite place. The beats and rhythms seemed to speak to a part of him that had been dormant for so long. He would spend hours lost in thought, staring out the window, wondering what it would be like to fully immerse himself in this new world. The curiosity gnawed at him, growing stronger with each passing day. His friends, noticing his growing interest in their world, extended invitations to parties and gatherings. They wanted him to be a part of their circle, to share in their joys and experiences. Ahosan, torn between his desire to experience this newfound freedom and the nagging voice of his conscience, found himself at a crossroads. The decision weighed heavily on him as he struggled to reconcile his inner conflict. The pull of the unknown was strong, whispering promises of excitement and belonging. The bright lights and vibrant energy of the city at night seemed to beckon him, offering a taste of a life he had never known. One evening, succumbing to temptation, Ahosan crossed the line. He decided to step into this new world, hoping to find the answers he was seeking. He found himself in a nightclub, the air thick with the scent of perfume and cigarette smoke. The atmosphere was electric, filled with the energy of people lost in the moment. The pulsating rhythm of the music vibrated through his body, awakening sensations he had never experienced before. The beats seemed to sync with his heartbeat, creating a connection he had never felt. He felt a surge of exhilaration, a sense of liberation from the constraints of his former life. For the first time, he felt truly alive, free from the expectations and rules that had always governed him. But guilt gnawed at the edges of his enjoyment. The voice of his conscience, though faint, was still there, reminding him of the values he was betraying. He knew deep down that his actions were wrong, that he was straying further and further from the path prescribed by his faith. The teachings of his upbringing clashed with the new experiences he was seeking. But the allure of this new world, with its promise of instant gratification and acceptance, proved too strong to resist. The temptation was ever present, pulling him deeper into a life he knew he shouldn't be living. Ahosan's descent into the abyss of temptation was gradual, but relentless. He started indulging in activities he once considered forbidden, justifying his actions with flimsy excuses. The Quran, once his constant companion, lay forgotten on a shelf, its pages gathering dust. The guilt that initially plagued him began to fade, replaced by a numbness that settled over his soul. He distanced himself from his family and the mosque, unable to bear their judgmental gazes. The life he had built, founded on the pillars of faith and righteousness, crumbled around him like a house of cards. The whispers that had once been subtle were now a deafening roar, urging him further down the path of self-destruction. Ahosan found himself trapped in a vicious cycle of sin and remorse, each transgression pushing him further away from the light of his faith. He sought solace in fleeting pleasures, desperately trying to fill the void within him. But the emptiness remained, a constant reminder of the spiritual wasteland he had created. Ahosan was a prisoner in his own making, bound by the chains of his desires. Section 4. The Grip of Temptation. As Ahosan drifted further away from his faith, a darkness began to envelop him. What started as whispers of temptation transformed into sinister voices, urging him to denounce his beliefs, to embrace a life devoid of God. Ahosan, weakened by his own transgressions, found himself increasingly susceptible to their influence. The line between right and wrong blurred, his moral compass spinning wildly. The once clear teachings of Islam became distorted, twisted by the demonic forces that now held sway over his mind. Ahosan, once a beacon of faith, became a puppet, his strings controlled by the whispers of evil. He renounced Islam publicly, his words a bitter taste in his mouth. His family, heartbroken and bewildered, pleaded with him to come back to his senses. But Ahosan, blinded by the darkness that had consumed him, pushed them away. His heart hardened against their love. Torment became his constant companion. Sleep offered no escape, his nights haunted by nightmares filled with grotesque imagery and the chilling laughter of demons. Ahosan had reached a point of no return, or so he believed. The light of faith that had once illuminated his path was extinguished, leaving him lost and broken in a world shrouded in shadows. Section 5. Lost and Broken. Years passed, each one dragging Ahosan deeper into the abyss of despair. The days seemed endless, blending into nights of restless torment. Seasons changed, but his sorrow remained constant, a relentless shadow that refused to lift. The vibrancy that had once characterized him was replaced by a hollow shell, his eyes reflecting the torment that raged within. His once bright and hopeful gaze had turned into a vacant stare, a window to the suffering that consumed him. He had tasted the fleeting pleasures the world offered, only to discover they left him emptier than before. The bright lights and bustling streets of the city only served to highlight the void within him, a stark contrast to the emptiness he felt inside. The weight of his sins pressed down on him, suffocating him with guilt and regret. Each misstep, each wrong choice, added to the burden he carried, an invisible weight that grew heavier with each passing day. He had betrayed his faith, his family, and most importantly, himself. The memories of happier times haunted him, a stark reminder of what he had lost and the person he had become. Ahosan had become a shadow of his former self, a living testament to the destructive power of straying from the righteous path. His reflection in the mirror was a constant reminder of his fall from grace, a painful acknowledgement of his own failings. He sought solace in solitude, isolating himself from the world that had witnessed his downfall. The quiet of the forest and the stillness of the night were his only companions, offering a temporary escape from his inner turmoil. The company of others brought him no joy, only a painful reminder of the life he had squandered. Watching happy families and joyful gatherings from a distance, he felt like an outsider, forever separated from the warmth and love he once knew. Ahosan was a man drowning in a sea of despair, his cries for help lost in the deafening silence of his own making. The vast emptiness around him mirrored the desolation within, a stark landscape devoid of hope and comfort. One stormy night, as thunder shook the heavens and lightning illuminated the sky in jagged flashes, Ahosan reached his breaking point. The storm outside was a reflection of the turmoil within him, a chaotic symphony that echoed his inner pain. He collapsed to his knees, tears streaming down his face, and cried out to Allah. His voice, raw with emotion, was a plea for mercy, a desperate call for salvation from the depths of his suffering. The words, filled with remorse and a desperate yearning for redemption, tumbled from his lips, a beacon of hope piercing through the darkness that had enveloped his soul. In that moment of vulnerability, he found a glimmer of light, a small but powerful sign that perhaps redemption was still within reach. Section 6. A Glimmer of Hope. Ahosan's prayer that night was different. It wasn't the rote recitation of memorized verses, devoid of emotion. It was as if the weight of his entire existence had been poured into each word, each syllable. His heart, heavy with years of accumulated sorrow and regret, found a voice in that moment of solitude. This time, it was a raw, heartfelt plea, a desperate cry for help from a soul teetering on the brink of oblivion. His voice cracked with the intensity of his emotions, tears streaming down his face as he laid bare his soul before his Creator. As the storm raged outside, mirroring the turmoil within him, Ahosan felt a shift, a glimmer of hope igniting in the ashes of his despair. The thunder echoed his inner chaos, yet amidst the flashes of lightning, he sensed a presence, a divine reassurance that he was not alone in his struggle. He remembered a verse from the Quran, a verse he had often recited in his youth. "Say, O Muhammad, O my servants who have transgressed against themselves by sinning, do not despair of the mercy of Allah. The words, once just ink on paper, now seemed to pulse with life, resonating with a newfound significance. Indeed, Allah forgives all sins. The simplicity and power of this promise struck him deeply. It was as if a door he had long thought sealed was now opening, inviting him to step through and embrace the possibility of redemption. Indeed, it is He who is the forgiving, the merciful. Quran 39:53. These words, so familiar yet so profound, offered a lifeline. They were a beacon in the darkness, guiding him back to a path he had strayed from. The words resonated deep within him, offering a lifeline in the vast ocean of his guilt. He felt a warmth spreading through his chest, a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. It was as if the heavy chains of his past were beginning to loosen, allowing him to breathe more freely. Could Allah, in His infinite mercy, truly forgive someone who had strayed so far, who had willingly turned his back on His guidance? The question lingered, but it was no longer a source of despair. Instead, it was a spark, igniting a flame of hope that began to burn brighter with each passing moment. The thought, though laced with uncertainty, sparked a flicker of hope in Ahosan's heart. He realized that the very act of questioning, of seeking forgiveness, was a step towards healing. It was a sign that his heart was still capable of feeling, of yearning for a connection with the divine. He clung to this newfound hope like a man clinging to a raft in a stormy sea. The tempest of his emotions was still raging, but now he had something to hold on to, something to keep him afloat as he navigated the turbulent waters of his soul. The path ahead was still shrouded in darkness, but for the first time in years, Ahosan felt a glimmer of light guiding his way. It was a faint, fragile light, but it was enough to illuminate the first steps of his journey back to faith, back to himself. He resolved to fight, to claw his way back from the abyss he had fallen into. With each prayer, each moment of reflection, he felt himself growing stronger, more determined. The road to redemption was long and arduous, but Ahosan was ready to walk it, one step at a time, guided by the glimmer of hope that had reignited his spirit.